Adventure and Pipeman on W4CY Radio.
This is the Pipeman here on the Adventures of Pipeman W4CY Radio, and we're here at the Hell's Heroes Festival, which last night at the pre-party, there was a badass headliner for the pre-party that killed it, and the drummer is here with me. So tell us who I got here.
This is Robert Garven, the drummer of Cirith Ungol.
Nice. I love it. You know, when I saw the lineup for this, I was like, man, I got to do that festival because this is the first year I've done this festival. Like, I do all the DWP festivals. I do all the punk festivals, Hellfest, Bloodstock, Download, Grass Pop. But I never did this one. And I saw the lineup, and I'm like, holy shit, that's like going back in time for me. I mean, I bought your first album in 1981, you know?
Wow.
And you know who I can credit that to? I was saying this to Warlord yesterday. I used to go to this record store in the Valley called Oz Records, and there was this record clerk there. And we used to go in and he'd say, hey, check this out. And we always bought albums he told us to buy.
Brian Slagel.
There it is. There it is. I was like, it's funny. I was saying this yesterday, too. A few years ago, I saw him somewhere. I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? I'm like, you know, I was thinking about it. That was such a brilliant marketing move back then. He goes, I wasn't doing marketing. I was just a record store clerk starting my label, you know, but it was brilliant because I think without guys like him and Johnny Zazula, we might not be sitting here right now today. You know, it does amaze me that I now go to festivals. I'll have like 100,000 metalheads, like, because back then there was a small group of us, and then there was a small group of punkers, and we didn't get along with each other either, which I thought was stupid, you know. But man, you guys were tight last night. I just have to say that. I don't know after what has it been, like 55 years, how you guys still do it.
Well, I love heavy metal. I love playing heavy metal. I love working on writing new heavy metal songs. And so, you know, I mean, this is an amazing festival. This was our fourth time here. And I think we might have headlined it at least once or twice. And we played outside on the big stage last time. But when we first played here, they weren't doing the outdoor stage. It was just indoors where we played last night. And the promoter, everyone involved with it, you know, the whole festival is just amazing.
Well, what I've noticed already, okay, as somebody that does a lot of festivals, is it's old school. It's run like it should be for a metal festival. It's not some big commercial money grab. It's for the fans.
Well, this is the 8th edition, and I think, you know, when someone puts on a festival like this, you know, any issues they have, you know, if they are successful and they keep putting on festivals, every time gets better and better. And the acts, you know, I'm amazed every year the acts keep getting bigger and bigger. Like I said, we headlined this place before, but after a while, you know, we're going to open for Judas Priest. We're not going to headline over them. You know what I mean?
And you know, what I like about bands like you and bands from that era is you could always tell the band just by listening to them for a couple seconds. I find nowadays a lot of these new metal bands, they like use this, I call it an algebraic equation to make their metal music. Whereas back then, you were just experimenting and finding these new sounds. And like, if I hear one of your songs, it takes me literally 2 seconds to know it's your song. Opposed to trying to figure out who's that. And like, the voice is so distinctive that how could you not? It's like even the big four of thrash. They don't sound the same. They, you know, and nowadays when you have all these micro genres and subgenres, it's like they put it so finite that the things that the adults were saying when I was a kid, all that stuff sounds the same. I feel like I'm saying that now, but for those fans, it's wild, right?
Well, The band started in 1971, and me and Greg and Jerry, the original members, we were like in junior high school, and we were assigned to read The Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien. And, back then, the joke is, everyone knows Lord of the Rings. They've seen the movies and stuff. This was when, I came home and told my parents, I have to read this book, The Lord of the Rings. They go, what is that? No one's even heard of it. Plus, you're a 13-year-old kid, and a teacher hands you, here's a 700-page book you got to read, and you're going 700 pages. It's like War and Peace, right? And then they go, well, there's 2 more books the same length, you have to finish. But I think it made an impression on us. I think one of the weird things is a lot of people go, well, your name's from The Lord of the Rings, and, all your album covers feature Elric, who is off a series of books by the English author Michael Moorcock, right? How come we don't write all this stuff about that? And there's other bands, really good friends with some other bands that, they delve deeper into that. And I think early in our career, we did more like half of our music was sword and sorcery and half was kind of like what you consider proto doom metal.
Right.
But, I don't know. Me and Tim always say, it's like, even though those were major influences on the band when we first started, they don't define us. That's not what defines us is the music. Mm-hmm. And as the world deteriorates, whether it's environment, politically, whatever on the world, our music has got gloomier and doomier. But one of the first songs we ever put out was Death of the Sun. And I wrote the lyrics for that. And it was about the sun dying and all of us getting melted and stuff. So, we're not actually stretching to play doom metal. That's kind of our original. Someone told Tim once in an interview, they go, you're the grandfathers of doom metal. And I don't know if that's, we might be the great grandfathers.
Right. And what I find too about the old school bands like you compared to bands today is what the influences were. Like you're sitting here wearing a Blue Cheer shirt, which, maybe back in their time, they would be considered heavy metal, but not by today's standards for sure.
By my standards, they still are.
Me too.
And like this is their best album too, Vincibus Eruptum.
Yeah, so to me, they are. I even argue that Cream is metal and that,
Jimi Hendrix.
Exactly. Mountain is like, to me, Mississippi Queen is like one of the original. I even argue that Helter Skelter is a metal song.
Well, you're right. And Mountain actually is one of my favorite bands, and it's the first band I ever saw live.
Nice.
And I think the first time I ever smoked pot, my neighbor lady, she took me to a Mountain concert, we smoked some pot. And that's when you smoke pot, you didn't even get stoned, it's just
right.
Kind of like you were being cool. But it was one of the best experiences of my life. And I'll tell you, Mountain, I've seen like a lot of bands over the years. And Corky Lang on drums, Leslie West on guitar. Matter of fact, I recently did an interview with someone. They said it was in South America, and they go, pick one of your favorite songs of all time. And I picked Don't Look Around by Mountain. And Leslie West, I remember him playing lead. He'd just make the guitar like singing,
Yeah.
And then Felix Pappalardi, it's funny, they always had an organist, but sometimes even in pictures of the band or on the album, they didn't even mention him, or he's not even in the picture, and yet he was like a full member of the band. And what's so horrible about that, his name actually escapes me right now. But I mean, I don't know. I guess he was treated like most drummers are in bands, kind of second-class citizens.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think the drums are what make metal. Like guitars do too, and voice does too. But like I think of when Lombardo started doing double bass, that was the start of thrash metal. Or like we have Udo playing. So funny because I have an actual story about this, but when Fast as a Shark came out, bands like Anthrax, Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, who I was all friends with at the time, they consider that the first thrash metal song ever. And it is pretty funny. So, we lost Ozzy recently, and I have an Ozzy story that has to do with Accept. So I lived in Agoura, California, on Lake Lindero, and I was just talking about this the other day with interviewing Moore. And basically, I had this, a hill that went down to the lake. I told my dad I was sleeping over my bro's house. My bro said to his parents that he was sleeping over my house, and it was New Year's Eve, and we went to see Ozzy with Randy Rhoads like a few months before he passed. And we get home, and we're sitting at the bottom of the lake so my dad couldn't see me, and we're just waiting until morning so we could show up like, oh, here we are. And my next door neighbor comes out, a woman, and she sees us in all the Ozzy stuff, and she goes, oh, hey, did you boys go to the Ozzy concert last night? And we're like, oh, fuck, we're busted. And she goes, stay right there. I want my husband to come out. This is my next door neighbor. We're like, we didn't know what to do, run or stay there. So we stayed. He came out, invited us up to the house, and he had a studio in his house. It was wall-to-wall cassette tapes. And he starts giving us all this Ozzy swag. Turned out he was Ozzy's promoter. Like, who the fuck knew? But the best thing was he hands me this cassette tape. He says, this band is not in America yet. They're going to be huge in like 6 months. Check it out. And that was Accept. And heard that first song, Fast as a Shark. I was like, oh my God. Now that song may not survive today with the track mentality. They wouldn't give it the 10 seconds it would take to get into the song. They would go, what's this shit? And go to the next track. And I think that's also a big difference of music then opposed to today. It was almost like you went on a journey.
Well, it is a journey.
Right.
The biggest compliment we ever had, okay, so the band, we started in 71. You know, we had our first 3 albums out, Frost and Fire, King of the Dead, One Foot in Hell. And we're working on Paradise Lost. And right about that time, you know, the thrash metal bands were coming on and stuff. And we actually, you know, to us, that wasn't our thing. And I'll tell you why, is because, you know, we considered that kind of like a hybrid, like heavy metal and punk, you know, because
we
lived through the whole punk thing and we all loved it. I saw the Dead Boys, you know, you said the first thrash song, I'm thinking in my head, that's actually Search and Destroy by Iggy or something, you know, and maybe I'm wrong. But we saw that, you know, as kind of like not threatening us. It just is like it wasn't what we grew up on, all the traditional heavy metal, like the Blue Cheer. Mm-hmm. You know, people used to joke about us and stuff, you know, saying we're dinosaur rock, you know, but we've always stayed true to what we originally started at. And so the band broke up in 91. And the hair metal thing was happening too, and we were just, you know, we were horrified by that. I mean, I got to be honest.
Me too.
The one hair metal band I like was Winger, and I think their music was so good. It's like, you know, the hair thing was secondary. But anyway, so when that Paradise Lost came out, you know, we were kind of like, we lost a couple of members, and we're like, you know, hey, this is, you know, there's no future for what we want to do or what we're doing, and so. You know, we kind of hung up our hat, but then in 2015, Jarvis Leatherby, you know, our manager, bass player, and he's you know, the founder and the bass player for Night Demon. You know, he manages a bunch of other bands. He contacted me and said, "You guys should get your band back together." I go, "It's no way is that going to happen." You know, and then he goes, "Well, I'm putting on a festival here in our hometown of Ventura," and he goes, "I want you to come check it out." And he goes, after the show, we'll do a signing session. And, you know, fans may bring their albums. And, you know, we're just blown away. We went and saw the bands. And, you know, we went to the signing session. We didn't know what to expect. And there was like people in line, you know, with all our albums. We're signing it. You know, saying you should get back together. And a gentleman from Germany, Oliver, who puts on the Keep It True Festival, said, you know, if you guys get back together, you guys can headline our show next year. And then Jarvis goes, you know, I'll do better than that. I go, you guys get back together, you guys can headline my second Frost and Fire in your hometown, right? And so, you know, we're talking about it, especially me and Tim, because we're kind of like you know, his vocals are so strange and my drumming's so strange. That's what kind of, I don't say that's what defines the band, but when you say, you know, instantly who it is, it's like, you know, sometimes other drummers are insulted to even sit in the same room with me because they think I'm, you know, my style is so, you know, unorthodox. But anyway, we're talking about it and we say, okay, well, let's do one or two of these shows to have some fun. And as we started playing, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. We started, getting excited about it, and I consider myself, a heavy metal musician, right? So as soon as I started playing again, I go, let's write some material, let's write some music, right? So I'm bugging all the guys in the band. So we started making music. We put out a single, Witch's Game. And people are like, oh my God, I can't believe, these guys are still, they can still do it. Or someone said they sound just like Sirith Ungol. And my joke was if the Beatles got back together and they had a single, they'd go, wow, they sound like the Beatles. But the biggest compliment was when we had our first full-length album, Forever Black. One guy wrote, he goes, this album sounds like it was written in the 1980s.
There you go.
I don't know.
I think the music was better than, except for the hair metal. So it is funny, too, because I went to shows in L.A. before Slayer and Metallica left L.A. because they couldn't play with. I saw Stryper open for Slayer. Because that's what was going on. And I used to be backstage. I was friends with a bunch of bands, and I used to watch what the record labels did to these bands, specifically the hair metal. I'm like, that's when I left music, basically, like the scene. Never left music, just the scene. And I was like, yeah, fuck this. Like, I'm not posing out on my passion. Like, I'll pose out in the business world, but not in the music world. And it almost did destroy metal forever. And thankfully it didn't.
Metal will never die.
That's it.
True metal will never die.
That's it. It's like when I talk to people
in the hearts of men.
Yeah.
And women.
And I talk to people and they're like, oh, I used to listen to metal. Well, then you were not a metalhead. Like I don't know a real metalhead that says they used to listen to metal, and, people like our age will get shade for, I'll drive down the road blasting as loud as I can. And aren't you a little old for that? You know what? Fuck off. No, they don't get it. They don't get what it is. The best therapy there is too, to me. Like I had something really, really bad happen in the past couple years. And I went into a mosh pit and I got all that shit out in the pit instead of out on the street, and it's like, I think people don't understand what metal's all about. Funny story. I had to cover 2 festivals one weekend. Of course, I couldn't be at both. So I had an employee of mine. I was like, hey, I want you to cover this festival. She had never been to a rock show ever. She was a country girl. And I literally said to her, I'm like, listen, you're going to have the best time of your life. Here's what's going to happen. First of all, it's not like your country shows with a bunch of rednecks getting drunk on Jack Daniels and beating the shit out of each other. And you think it's so scary with the mosh pits. I'm more scared with those people. You're going to make all kinds of new friends, and you're going to probably meet some dude, and you're going to see we're just one big family and that all loves each other, where there's no outsiders. She came back after a weekend. Oh my God, you were so right. I have all these new friends, and I teabagged some guy, and he's now my boyfriend. And I have this new favorite band. They're called Bring Me to Horizon. I'm like, yeah, I think I might have heard of them. And it was just like a perfect conversion. People need to experience it. I even think, if we want to solve all the world's problems, whether it's the 80s, now, or whenever in time, have one big music festival that's a metal festival, and everybody just go into the mosh pit and work it out. And there you go. We don't need anything else.
Yeah, the metal community around the world is amazing. We were playing somewhere like a big show like Vakken, like 81,000 people or something, and I think we went 3 days and I never saw a policeman. I never saw anyone get arrested. I never saw anyone pushing anyone in line. I called my wife. We live in Ventura, California, and there was like a band, they have like a small little surf festival thing called the Surf Rodeo down by the beach.
Yeah.
And I called her and I go, how was that? She goes, well, there's 300 people. And within a couple of hours, there was like a police riot. Like people were fighting and punching each other. And I go, I was just with 81,000 people for 3 days, and I never saw a cop or a fight or.
No doubt. It's always like that.
And everyone's drinking. But I think the metal festival, I think what it is, it's a whole group, like a family, and we all have some common, shared kind of vision or morality. and even though the music's really dark, I think
they're the nicest people.
But it's like people like watching horror movies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's why I like our doom stuff, because it's kind of, someone said it's like prophecy, prophetic or whatever, and Tim, I've written some of the songs over the years, like Legions Arise, King of the Dead, Death of the Sun, what have you. But Tim's latest batch of songs, is he considers himself kind of like Jim Morrison, kind of like a wandering poet or something. And
nice.
Some of it's really good. I mean, if you read our lyrics, they're on multiple levels. And I was expecting you to ask me, because someone asked me, they go, well, what does this lyric mean? Or what does that lyric mean? And Tim goes, well, read the lyrics, so.
Yeah, that ain't me, because like you've already been asked that question 10 million times. Like, how'd you get your band name? Like, you explained it, but I was never going to ask it. But I do get a lot of times about my radio label. It's so funny. All the bands, they always like, where'd you get? And they make up shit. They'll write songs during the interview. And really, it's just my last name made into a nickname.
I have a funny story about that. We were playing Rock Hard in Gelsenkirchen, Germany. Amazing. Okay, so near our little hometown, there's a place called Foster Park, and there's a place of Foster Park Bowl, and it's kind of like a small Roman amphitheater, maybe holds 500 people max, or 1,000, maybe if you crammed them in there. We played there a couple of times when the band was first starting, before we even had a singer, so it's just like a 3-piece instrumental thing. But anyway, it's like a giant Roman kind of Colosseum, right? Or in Athens, Greece. So we show up at this place in Germany, drive up, we drop off some merch or something, and I'm with Jarvis. We walk over the edge, and I see this giant amphitheater, and it's just like the one I kind of grew up playing at, but like maybe 50 times the size. And I go, hey, man, this is going to be a good concert. Anyway, so me and Tim were walking around through the crowd looking at, T-shirts and stuff, and want to interview us for the German TV station that was going to film the thing. And the lady came up, and she's asking us a bunch of questions, and she goes, is it true that you speak Elvish? And I said, well, no. And I go, actually, if we did, we'd have pronounced the name of our band correctly, because in the books, pronounced like with a K, like Cirith Ungol. And the joke was, even though we were assigned to read this as kids, and I probably read The Lord of the Rings 3 times through, I never spent the time to read the appendixes where it told you how to pronounce, the words or speak in Elvish. So we told the lady, no, we didn't speak Elvish.
That's cool. Sure. And speaking of stories, what would you say is like your most memorable story in the past 55 years? Crazy, good, bad, just the one that like really sticks out in your mind.
We played a festival which used to be in East Germany, called Chaos Descends. And it was named after, we have a song on our third album, One Foot in Hell, Chaos Descends. So we're out in the middle of this forest, and there's like mountains, and there's a river running through it. And, we were on stage, and we're playing the song Chaos Descends, and I'm looking up, and I can see the stars, and I can see mountains with trees on it. It's like, I don't know, it's, and I could feel the vibrations underneath me, and I kind of almost felt like I was connected to the ground, and I can hear the people in the audience over, we play loud, and this was a pretty amazing setup there. They had like a pretty great sound system and stage, and I could hear the crowd like chanting Chaos Descends. And I looked out there, and I just felt like, wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever felt in my life. And that weekend, right? The band Sun O, they play, I think some of their songs have one chord in it or something, and they hold a guitar over their head. And we were backstage, and they had a rack of like fog machines, like most guys have a rack of like maybe guitar effects. I think they had 2 of them with like maybe 10 fog machines in each rack and stuff. And what was kind of funny, we were over like, in between shows or something before we played, and the guys in Sun O came over, and they said, well, they'd heard of the band, and they'd liked us, and they're fans or something. And we were joking because, they wear like outfits where you can't see who they are. And we wish, sometimes we, had a face mask on or like a cloak over our head or something, because they could just walk around through the whole festival and no one even ask them who they are. But yeah, so then we watched them play, and it was just amazing. I mean, it was so loud, and the vibrations from the stage. And so I would say my best experience was probably at that festival, just because it was just so primitive. And I mean, not technologically, but you're literally, and when you think something like Woodstock, this beautiful area, and it's descended on by all these people and they kind of mess it up. This place was so pristine, and the stage was so perfectly located that, it didn't affect the environment or the nature or anything around it. It was just kind of part of it.
You should also look into, have you heard of the organization called Savage Lands? Oh, so they're really cool. They plant trees with metal bands all over the world to save the planet. They planted a bunch this year at Hellfest, and you have bands like Heilung that's involved with them, and a lot of the European bands are very involved with them. And it's like a totally cool concept for sure, because it's just it just shows how much us metalheads really do care about everything.
I love all that. I'll look into that.
Yeah, I'll send you some info. I'll send you the website. You can check it out, because it's amazing. And do you know the band Heilung?
Yes.
Yeah, so they're the perfect band for that, type of thing. And they're very involved in it. There's a bunch of other bands that are involved in it, and they're just planting trees all over the world, and it's metal and the environment connected together.
Well, we need more trees.
Yes, a lot less. I flew in here from Costa Rica. One day I'm surfing in Costa Rica, the next day I'm in a pit at Hell's Heroes in Houston, Texas. But it pisses me off every time I go there too, because they keep knocking down trees to build more buildings. For what? It's something as pristine as Costa Rica should stay pristine. We got plenty of places where you could build buildings. You look at downtown Houston, okay, I'm cool with that. That's downtown Houston. That's where the buildings should be. Don't knock down the trees and get rid of the wildlife. We'll have nothing left, man, except a bunch of stucco. That's why I feel in Florida. I live in Florida. I feel it's just all stucco.
Well, you mentioned you hung out on the Sunset Strip and stuff. I kind of want to talk about this. Our last album that we put out was actually, we were going to have so our last studio album, Dark Parade, which I think was freaking amazing. It was some of the best stuff that we've ever done. Very dark, really heavy, a lot of cool songs on there, a lot of great ideas and stuff. Very consistent, kind of flowed from, the beginning to the end, and the kind of fashion I think is a perfect album. It's not a theme album, but it had this theme running through it. So we were going to do a album release party, and between the record company and Jarvis, and I'm not sure who came up with the idea, they go, well, why don't you guys have the party at the Roxy on the Sunset Strip? And Metal Blade goes, okay, so we're going to record it and make a movie out of it and make a live album. And so we were all, okay. And we'd played at the Roxy in the 1980s, and I think Brian, from Metal Blade Records, he put on a couple of shows back at the time when Metal Massacre, his first album, came out. Yeah. And, we played with Omen and Bitch and some of the other bands.
Oh, I miss Bitch.
Yeah. Well, they just played in our hometown. Jarvis put on a Frost and Fire 5 just within the last couple of months. And Bitch was there.
I should have been there, man. I've gone to so many of their shows.
So anyway, this was going to be at the Roxy, and since we had a history of playing there, we're kind of all excited about it. And all the guys came out from, the record company in Germany and here in the United States, and, it was packed. And we always have this joke, they had a deal if it was sold out, you got extra money for playing, Right. And I think the maximum capacity was 540 people. And for some reason, we always have 543 or 443 people. It's always 7 people less than the sellout thing. And we're always joking that, I don't know whether that's always rigged or not.
Right. You should have just grabbed people off the street.
But anyway, it was a fantastic show, and it came out really good. But what I was going to say about it is most live albums, I've always loved live albums, but sometimes they didn't sound all that great. But we took the feed straight off our inner monitor mixer thing. I was just amazed, the clarity of all the instruments, the drums, the guitars, and the bass and vocals and everything came out near perfect. And for any of your listeners, that haven't seen the band live or aren't able to, can't make it out to one of our shows, if they go on YouTube or pick up the album on Metal Blade live at the Roxy, I think they'll be surprised because it was pretty awesome.
I love that because the first club show I ever went to in my life was at the Roxy, and it was Motley Crue, but before they had an album, so they weren't glam or hair metal yet. They were more like horror punk. And I remember they were trying to burn the Roxy down to bring Satan in to the club. And I remember saying to myself, oh my God, I'm never going to a real concert ever again. And that's what started me on going to like every club show there was. And, you were mentioning Bitch. I saw them a bunch of times. One of my favorite bands who actually just came out with an album a few years ago for the first time in like 35 years or something was Savage Grace. And, I have kids and I tell my kids stories of back then. And you know how your kids are. They're like, yeah, sure, Dad. They think you're exaggerating. And of course, we don't have any proof. So like they think you're full of crap. So I actually at the country club in Reseda, I ended one of Savage Grace's shows, not that they ended because of me, but on the last note, I climbed up onto the Marshall stack and did a swan dive. Crowd moved while I was midair and I knocked out my teeth. And it was not fun. And then, of course, the security kicked me out of the place, because they didn't want a lawsuit or whatever. And so after that, Savage Grace pretty much went away and I never really saw them again. I used to hang out with them all the time and I'd roadie for them just because they were friends of mine. So I get this email a few years ago and it's like, oh, Savage Grace, new album. I'm like, holy shit. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'll definitely interview them. I contacted the publicist right away. I'm like, yeah, definitely interview. And I get on with Chris and I go, I don't know if you remember, but and we were doing this in the interview, but I'm the one that did the stage dive that knocked out my teeth. And he goes, yeah, I saw your name. I immediately remembered. He goes, I felt so bad. I wondered whatever happened to you. And I used to tell my kids I was known as the most tragic thing that happened in LA metal. And he said that in the interview, word for word. He's like, you were the most tragic thing I ever saw in LA metal. And so I played it for my kids. So I'm like, see, your dad's not full of shit.
You should have a statue on a Sunset Strip,
right?
Dedicated to you.
Right? But yeah, lots of stories like that. You got lots of stories. And I'm so happy you were here at Hell's Heroes once again. I didn't even know you were here four times until last night. And then I'll tell you what I really love too. You're playing and then all of a sudden you went into that drum solo. Nobody does that anymore. That was badass.
I actually have a 30-minute drum solo, but the guys in the band aren't really fans of drum solos. So I used to play it at the end. And kind of my theory was, it's like the end of the show. So any extra energy I had, I can pump it in, and do this amazing thing. And Tim's all, you can't do the drum solo at the end of the show because people get bored and they'll start leaving and stuff. And I go, well, they're going to leave anyway. It's the end, right? So now I do it after Black Machine. And
well, I dug it. So you can tell him that, no, the drum solo needs to stay in.
Yeah, no, I love it. The other joke is sometimes, we're playing, and if someone breaks a string, like a bass string or guitar string or something, then that's my cue. Because I'm a drummer. I always want to do a drum solo. I always want to play cowbell, hit my gong, whatever. On our last couple albums, there was a joke. The band goes, look, you have one song you can do the cowbell on. And I'm like, why can't I do it on all 8 songs? More cowbell.
I love it.
So, but I just wanted to say playing here at Hell's Heroes is amazing. I'd like to plug another festival because the last time we played here, we went on and played this festival in Tulsa, Oklahoma, 2 Minutes to Tulsa. And it's as amazing as Hell's Heroes, but it's not that well known. And the promoter guy's so cool. And it's at a place called Kane's Ballroom that Mountain played at. A bunch of famous people. Matter of fact, backstage in the manager's office, there's a hole in the wall where Sid Vicious punched his.
Nice.
And so what they did, they hung a frame around the hole in the wall, like with the thing on there. So if anyone gets a chance, they got to go check out 2 Minutes to Tulsa. But I also want to thank, a record company, Metal Blade Records, all the guys here at, Hell's Heroes, but also the members of my band. Jarvis, he got us back together. Armand stepped in when a couple of the guys, had some health issues and had to leave. And Tim, our amazing singer, just being able to share the stage with people that, I consider my metal brothers is like an honor for me. And to share the stage with all these other incredible acts is just fucking awesome.
I love it. And tell everybody, too, how they can reach out to you guys, buy your merch, because they can't listen to my show if they don't buy your merch, because that's the only way you get to the next gig nowadays.
Well, we're on Bandcamp, indie merch. You can go to the Metal Blade website. Also, we have a Facebook, Instagram. I have one for myself personally, but then we have band ones. So you can find us pretty easily. We're not hiding anywhere, even though we're hiding in plain sight.
I love it, and I'm so glad that you were here at Hell's Heroes. And thanks a lot for being on the Adventures of Pipeman.
Hey, it was an honor, and thank you for letting me talk about the band.
This is Robert Garven, the drummer of Cirith Ungol, and I'm here with the Pipe Man on W4CY Radio.
Thank you for listening to the Adventures of Pipeman on W4CY Radio.